My parents, they often regard me as introverted, especially when I was young. Most Chinese parents, they favor a pretty obscure ritual at the dining table, which is asking their kids to either perform or say some greetings in front of all the relatives. And my parents are one of them. It may seem like a pretty proud opportunity for most parents to show off if their child did perform amazingly. But for me, that kind of task is the most detrimental disaster in the whole world. I remember one New Year Eve, my father, he asked me firmly to sit in front of four tables of relatives. Nauseous and anxiety just suddenly overwhelmed my brain, and my whole body is trying to convey a sign of reluctance. But finally, I have no choice. I was forced on stage, just standing there quietly, staring at the audience down the stage for entirely 2 minutes in front of so many people. And that 2 minutes become the most disappointing and shameful in my father's life. This is who I am, an introverted people who reject socializing with unacquainted people, who take at least a whole year to fit into a new environment, like when I first come to BASIS, who cannot even check off independently in the supermarket at the age of 12. This is a world of extroversion where outgoing, confident, and courageous people are the beloved ideal figure by most parents, schools, and even employers. People regard them as diamonds that shines everywhere. So for many years, I strived to abandon all my introverted characters, trying to become an extrovert. I hate my introversion so much, like having a tumor on my body, because the only thing introversion brings is more and more disappointment. Until one day, I watched a video, a TED Talk, by Susan King, a lawyer, about the power of being introvert. She claims that introverts are just as good as they are. When it comes to leadership and creativity, the world needs introverted people to do what they can do best. They just have their best capability in a quiet environment, so ignoring them is the world's loss. King's words has inspired me greatly, so I began to wonder, is introversion really a negative trait? Well, after taking AP Psychology this year, I realized that introversion and extroversion is never two extremes, like good and evil, that defines all human behavior within a single hue. Instead, human personality are actually diverse and flexible. For example, in Gordon Alport's trait theory, he has distributed human personality into three categories, which are cardinal, central, and secondary, claiming that although common traits are important in describing all people, unique personality must be considered. Furthermore, the famous Big Five personality factors also divides personality as conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and finally, extroversion. Probably, neuroticism is the only category that has a definite pros and cons, as a person who has a low score on neuroticism are calmer, while a high neuroticism people are more emotionally unstable. But for extroversion, Big Five has told us a different story. Low extroversion, which is introverted, are not solely negative. For example, an introvert can be inarticulate and indifferent, but also humble and independent. Meanwhile, an extrovert, he or she can be sociable and energized, but also careless and pompous. We all know that everyone is imperfect in this world. So never force ourselves to disobey our true identity, becoming all extroverts. If extroverted people, they are the sun, why cannot introverts be the stars that has its own power, shining in its own way? As an introvert, I personally prefer to work independently in school project, and just listening and observing my surroundings. Last year, I attended a golf tournament with many unfamiliar players. Although everyone else are having a lovely conversation, making new friends, hanging out, and talking to each other, I never said anything during the whole game, socialized with anyone, or joined any conversation. Instead, I was just immersing myself in my own world, quietly and independently figuring out the golf course and refining my swings. Although many people saw my behavior weirdly because I never said anything, I'm too quiet. But I want to say that this is my sparks. This is who I am, my introverted characters that helps me to stay focused, to be calm, and play well in the golf course. Well, I believe many of you may ask, why am I even still standing here giving this speech if I am afraid to speak in public, to share my opinions, as I mentioned in the beginning? It is not because I'm still trying to make myself an extrovert, but because I'm trying to find my own ideal state of personality, the best presentation of myself. I also realize that I don't actually have to become an extrovert to be an excellent public speaker. Actually, public speaking is just a skills or techniques one can learn to share their inner thoughts. In fact, many of the greatest public speakers of all time are introverts and manage to find their speaking niches. For example, like former UK Prime Minister Winston Churchill and US President Barack Obama. So I challenge myself to be more active in class, to interact with my teacher and my classmate more, although there's still so many room for improvements. I also tried debating where I realized that my thoughts are actually recognizable if I bravely and confidently present them to the public. But no matter how many extroverted activities I did, I remained that introverted person at the dining table. Consequently, if you are also an introvert, genuinely desire to change to a better version of yourself, then I would advise you to acquire useful skills, but retain those genuinely valuable introverted characters that signifies who you are. For those people like me, shy, quiet, and introverted, never feel guilty about your weakness in social interaction, public speaking, or even daily communication. If we think outside of the box from a different perspective, the world should actually stop stereotyping extroverts as the only successful group, while introverts as failures in society. We should definitely rip off the negative tag on introvert and define our fate by ourselves. Looking back to the New Year dining table example, although my parents, they realized that children should be accorded with more freedom in their decision, asking me to speak in front is still an unavoidable event because maybe they believe it is a part of Chinese tradition. But today, I would not reject that kind of request. I would accept it and try my best to convey my benediction to my relatives, even though still in a quite unnatural, shy, and kind of reluctant way. Because no one can persuade me to change my introversion. I believe this is just the best part of me. Therefore, do not change your intrinsic value because of others' judgment. Be yourself anytime, anywhere, not just at the dining table. Thank you.